Welcome to the Debrief, where we talk to the Washington Examiner's top journalists about the headlines they're covering this week and where the story's going next. I'm Jim Antle. I'm joined by magazine managing editor David Mark. David, we're always looking for these bellwether congressional races that are kind of going to tell us which way the race is unfolding for control of the House. New Hampshire's first congressional district is one that you've looked at. Talk a little bit about what the dynamics are there.
Yeah, this is the quintessential swing district. It takes in Manchester, some of the other cities. If you ever watch presidential politics, you see candidates go to all the time, also along the seacoast. The sitting congressman there is a Democrat, Chris Pappas. He's been in office since first winning that seat in 2018. He's facing a tough challenge from Republican Carolyn Levitt. She's a former aide advisor to Elise Stefanik, the House Republican conference chair. She's from upstate New York. This is a close race. It's an interesting seat to me because it seems to kind of usually go back and forth with wherever the political winds are.
Sure.
Going all the way back to 1974, Republicans have won the seat 13 times, Democrats 12 times. So it's about as closely contested House seat as you're going to find in the country.
Now, she's a relatively young candidate, and they've kind of made an issue out of her youth, showing her on TikTok and various websites like that. And she's also pretty conservative.
Yes.
So, these are kind of things that are going to play in what is a swing district.
Right. This is a seat that President Biden won with 52% of the vote over 46% for Donald Trump. So you could say it has a bit of a Democratic lean, but it could easily go Republican under the right circumstances. Caroline Levitt is indeed a strong conservative. She's also an election denier. She has been vocal about her views that Donald Trump was cheated out of the 2020 election. Chris Pappas, like many Democrats, is trying to use that against her. It remains to be seen how potent, if at all, that is in the face of high gas prices, inflation, and all these other national concerns.
So Tulsi Gabbard has left the Democratic Party. And I think the view was that maybe she'd become an independent and sort of advocate for some of the progressive issues that she championed in the House. That's really not what's happened. She's kind of hit the campaign trail for Republicans.
Right, and not just any Republican, but Carrie Lake, the Republican nominee for governor in Arizona, who is one of probably the most vocal proponent of the theory that Donald Trump was cheated out of the 2020 election, which of course is not stood up by the facts.
Sure.
Tulsi Gabbard, the former Hawaii congresswoman, was campaigning with Carrie Lake for a couple days, and that's really kind of a poke in the eye to Democrats who I think had basically read her out of the party for some time.
Right.
She was always sort of, not quite an apostate, but somebody who went her own way. I think she really hurt herself in the party when she actually met with Syrian leader Bashar Assad in 2017. And that's one of these weird issues where kind of the Bernie Sanders left and you might say non-interventionist right come together in American politics. Anyway, it wasn't good politics. She ran for president for the Democratic nomination in 2020.
Right.
She didn't get very far, but she did seem to have a habit of kind of poking some of the major party nominees and making them look bad, and that did not sit well with party regulars.
Well, there just was a perception, partly because of her father's background and some of her past views, but also some of the fights that she chose to pick, even when she was compiling a very liberal record in the House, that she really wasn't a progressive, that she was kind of secretly conservative.
Right, and Hawaii is the ultimate one-party state. It's overwhelmingly Democratic. To get elected there, you basically have to be a Democrat. And who knows what her initial motivations were. She actually got elected at a very young, I think she was like 21, when she first got elected to the state legislature and then moved up to Congress pretty quickly. Maybe she was more of a conventional Democrat early on, but for whatever reason, she had to have that party label, and she used it to run for election until she kind of wore out her welcome.
So there's an interesting congressional race going on in Montana right now, and it's gotten a little bit nasty, and it features obviously a veteran of the Trump administration. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, this is in a new district in Montana. Actually, Montana, it's grown so fast that it actually got a second congressional district for the first time in 30 years. And the candidate is the Republican nominee is a former Republican congressman who at the time represented the entire state of Montana, Ryan Zinke. His name may be familiar because he went on to become Interior Secretary for President Donald Trump, for the first 2 years of his administration. Zinke was hit with a lot of ethics allegations, and an Inspector General report found some funny doing in terms of his official travel and maybe not using taxpayer money very wisely. Not surprisingly, that's become an issue for his Democratic opponent. Her name is Monica Trinnell. She's a lawyer, but she's probably best known to voters, at least, as an Olympic rower back in 1996 and 2000. She's run a series of campaign commercials based on the mid-2000s era flick Snakes on a Plane, a film with Samuel L. Jackson, who I think he even denounced at one point. He basically said, "Hey, they offered me a good paycheck, so to speak," and it said in one of the entertainment shows. It's kind of a campy film. It's known for that. It's a pretty evocative commercial. She shows snakes on what looks like an airplane and scooping up with a shovel, like one might do if they're familiar working on a farm.
Right.
We'll see how effective it is. That seat, at this point, still leans Republican, but interesting thing about it, it takes in a couple of college towns like Bozeman, Missoula, University of Montana, Montana State University. It has Helena, the state capital. So over the course of this decade, you could see it getting more Democratic.
And you have had John Tester winning statewide now for quite some time.
Absolutely. There's absolutely precedent for it. So I think the real question there is how much people dislike Zinke. He actually barely won his primary for the Republican nomination. It was pretty narrow, so there's some votes against him, but in what's looking like a Republican year, that may be a tough slog for Democrats ultimately.
Thank you, David.
Thank you.
You can read David and the rest of our political team's coverage at washingtonexaminer.com.